everybody. Welcome to Takeoff with John Clark. I am John Clark. Please subscribe and rate and review this podcast. And we want to welcome in our special guest. We appreciate his time because he is a very busy man these days. Sixers president of basketball operations, Daryl Morey. Appreciate your time, Daryl.
Thanks, John. It feels like it hasn't been too long, but I guess it has. You were my first interview in town, which was pretty cool.
I love it, and we appreciate that. And by the way, it's kind of crazy to think that you were hired just 5 months ago. Boom, you go right into the draft, then free agency, and now the trade deadline, all within 5 months. Let me ask you, what is the most sleep-deprived endeavor out of all those?
The draft is usually, because you have free agency that hits right on the tail, and the prep level for the draft is higher than the trade deadline because both are important, but you have to study, hundreds of players for the draft and be ready for different dynamics that could happen then. So I'd probably say around the draft.
Well, when I first caught up with you, when you were hired, I remember you saying you can make all your moves now, or what you like to do is you like to leave a little bit of flexibility, some room, so you can see your team play, find something you need to improve on. Is that kind of what happened here, trading for George Hill?
Yeah, I think as we went through the season and us mapping ahead to the playoffs and the set of teams that we'll likely have to beat, Coach Rivers felt like a two-way guard was one of our needs, and so we were able to address that. But yeah, I totally agree. Look, I mean, the world's an uncertain place. I mean, we try to make sure every year we're the best team in the league, but often you're not. And so it's good to leave yourself the ability to make the upgrade where you have an injury or a need that emerges.
Have you been after George Hill for a while now?
A very long time, actually. I'm really happy. I talked to his agent is his one of his longtime friends, Matt, and we've almost signed him in free agency a bunch of times and just out, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. So it did feel like a personal reunion that we were able to finally get him on a team.
I remember when I first talked with you, I asked you about being in Houston, and Golden State Warriors were obviously one of the best teams of all time there. So you made some moves, you made deals to try to get past them and beat them. Are you now looking at the Brooklyn Nets in that same way? Because I just heard you say you felt like there was a need there for teams you could face in the playoffs.
Well, I also George Hill beat Golden State, so he did something I didn't do, which is great. I wouldn't say we're targeting one team. I mean, I think the favorites are pretty well aligned at this point, Brooklyn, us, and Milwaukee in the East. That's to say, not to minimize. I mean, several other teams can be dangerous and can probably knock out one of those top teams. So we have to be aware. But, looking at the top teams, Brooklyn being obviously probably the favorite going in, the way they're playing with a lot of switching, and they're going to target certain players on defense. So yeah, we felt like a two-way player on the perimeter who can play D and then also shoot at a very high level. Honestly, I didn't think someone would be available, but the fact that someone was really great.
So when you're going into the trade deadline and every night you're seeing your team play, especially without Joel Embiid and even a couple games without Seth Curry, when you're seeing how well they're playing and winning without those guys, does that lead you a certain way that you don't need to make a big move? Or how's that feeling going into it?
I think it really depends on who's available. To your point, where the team's playing, and then what are the kinds of things in the future that would how much we're willing to hurt our future odds to do those. And it didn't really get very close yesterday. George Hill was very clearly the move. We felt like he really helped us this year and actually increased our odds down the road because of the back end of George Hill's contract. We can keep him. And if he plays well, that's almost for sure what we'll do. Or, if for whatever reason the fit isn't there are ways to work together with his agent to create a win-win situation for the franchise. So, I feel like I didn't totally answer your question, so you might have to remind me. I just started going. You asked me about say again.
You kind of answered it. So, obviously there were a lot of reports out there yesterday. There's a lot of things out there, especially in a social media world. Does it get annoying when you start to see reports that you're like a leading candidate to get somebody else, and then there's certain players on the Sixers mentioned?
Yeah, that's often agents or other teams like trying to drum up things. I think if people stuck to the reliable sources out there, it would help a lot. But it is what it is. We all live in the media environment that can get annoying. But really, our decision making can often get extremely hard where you have multiple options and like you're trading off odds now versus odds in the future. But the George Hill move, which we would have even done a day early, it was the leading contender. Just the fact that it was a three-way made it something that took until the deadline day. That one was very clearly the leader. Given the options and the what people were asking for.
When you see certain names thrown out there in the media, one of them was Danny Green, and you see how Danny Green goes and performs in LA. Then I take you back to Ben Simmons. His name was mentioned out there for a certain guy who has the initials JH. How impressed have you been with Ben Simmons, the way he's performed after that? Because I was told that he was really devastated when he heard his name was possibly out there in trade. And then Danny Green, how he played.
Yeah, part of the business, unfortunately, but we try to minimize it by communicating and talking as much as we can with them. I remember the part of the question I didn't answer. I think in terms of how well the team is playing and how that factors in, I would say we're trying to map forward to the playoffs. Obviously, whether we have home court is in a big way dictated by how well Coach Rivers and his staff and Ben and Tobias and our role players who have the team playing right now. It's not a massive factor because, my job and the front office job is to really map forward to the playoffs. And, there's not a ton you can always learn, beating a team without their two stars. We're missing multiple players. Like you try to learn as much as you can, but you have to more map forward to the playoffs and think through that than anything else.
So one more question about the trade deadline and possible trades. We've seen the Houston Rockets trade some players. You obviously left Houston and came to Philly pretty quickly. Do you think in any way Houston, because there's rumblings that they don't really want to make a deal with you and help you out. Do you think that that's the case? I don't want to talk about that too. They're very professional. I can't imagine that's the case. I've seen those rumors and stuff. I think they're just making the best deals. I think Rafael and Eli, who are there, do an amazing job. And I think, if we're the best deal for their franchise, for sure they'll make it. I don't put anything to that. And when you've talked about judging a deal, judging value, you're talking about right now and then a couple of years down the road. You don't want to lessen the probability of you being able to win a championship. Do you ever look at the window that you think you have with Joel Embiid, him being a big man, and he's had some foot injuries and knee issues, and you went through that in Houston with Yao Ming?
Yeah, you have to look at that. And of course, we look at it. So if there are multiple moves and one, we're perfectly comfortable giving up some future to try and push our odds higher this season. We put the most weight on this season, but frankly, like nobody made it hard on us yesterday. George Hill actually we think is a huge upgrade. Maybe some people see the other options as bigger, but assuming even that's true, like it was in la la land really. And you could see when certain players weren't moved, that was true.
I remember talking with you, and Doc Rivers told you that he thinks this team can be the number one defense in the NBA. This is actually coming to fruition. You think you can go into the playoffs as the top defense in the league?
Yeah, Coach Rivers and Dan Burke and really the players who are out there playing on the string, playing hard every night, deflections, just everything. we feel like our championship formula is to be the number one defense in the league. We feel like we are that when we're healthy. We're showing that. It's a little bit of a weird year to look at, the data with all the changes, but I think we're number two. We expect we'll be number one at the end, even with all the players out. But more importantly, all season with everyone healthy, we've been number one regardless of anything else. And we think that's where we hang our hat. Our offense will key off our defense, and we feel like that's our formula. That was the formula that Coach Rivers had when his Celtics team won the title. They were the number one defense by a good margin, and their offense keyed off that, and we feel like the top defense is our formula this year as well.
And I know you have said you think the biggest addition to the Sixers, I saw on Twitter, you said you think it's Doc Rivers. When you look at what he's done with this team, and even Tobias Harris, maybe Tobias Harris was playing out of position last year, but especially with Tobias, what do you think Doc has done with Tobias to have a career year now?
Yeah, and really up and down the whole roster. It's not just Tobias. Are all having career years, and it's not an accident. Coach Rivers and his staff. I think the thing that Doc does is he puts the players in their best position to succeed. And he had a great familiarity of what kind of actions and where Tobias likes the ball and where he's most comfortable. And he also has Tobias playing his best defense too. Like that, I've been so impressed with the work Tobias has put in and the environment that the coaching staff has put him in to make him the player that, not make him, but to have him be the player that everyone expected when they made that big trade, which has turned out really well for the franchise.
So I'll be a little quieter with this question. Are you almost
just like Connie Chung, whisper it to me?
Right.
Whisper it to me. Okay, I'm ready. Yeah.
Are you almost kind of sneaky, quietly happy that Tobias was not an all-star because of the chip on his shoulder? And it seems like the anger that he has, because he was yelling out a home game recently, I'm an all-star. And you saw it's kind of like personal to him.
Yeah, again, only Tobias. Yeah, if that's Tobias, that only. I think he was playing great before and after. So I'm not sure. I think I would prefer that Tobias would go like Michael Jordan and make the All-Star team, and then dream up ways to get angry if he needs that. So he gets the benefit of both. So.
Yeah, but it is amazing because you can tell how much that's affected him. And do you think it really is something that's driving him even more to prove to people that he deserves to be?
Well, I think he understands that he's one of the top players in the league, and he's frustrated that folks haven't recognized that. But I think it's coming. When you're the top team in your conference and he's playing night in, night out, consistent, all-star level basketball, I think that's when the respect comes. And I think he's looking for that, and he deserves it, and it's coming.
What's been your biggest surprise or biggest revelation, whether it's with a player, the way you play or something like that, since you've taken over?
Biggest surprise. That's a really, I have to think about that. You might have to edit this part as I pause and ponder.
We can play some Jeopardy music.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. I like to be thoughtful in my answers, so that's what I'm thinking.
You always are.
Yeah, try to be. Actually, I'll just stick with Tobias. I think you don't really appreciate someone's defense until you're up close, because it's a little harder to judge from a distance if you're not watching them every single night than offense. And I would say, Tobias's defense, at a high level. I knew Ben's and Joel's was, but Tobias. So, a lot of my job is, building off of the star players. So I spend a lot of time thinking of those players even more before taking a job here. And so did Doc Rivers. And coming in, I expected Tobias to be a better offensive player than maybe I knew, because I just felt like, when he was put in the right situations, he was good. But defensively, he's really stepped up and played at a level that I didn't know he had.
Is there anything about Joel and Ben, your stars, as you talked about, that you see every day and you're like, wow, that's even better than I thought, or kind of surprises me?
I would say defensively, but I would also say, coming in, a lot of people were like, hey, the two of them can't play together. And I was open-minded. I didn't until you work with someone every day, it's really hard. Our job is to do our best from a distance to evaluate them when we're at other franchises, but you don't really know them until it's every day. And the Joel and Ben fit is one that can work and has worked and will take us very far. So that was one that I was able to knock out of my mind that a lot of people thought coming in.
Everybody was talking about Joel Embiid being possible MVP. And now it seems like at least Vegas or whoever they are, they're saying the odds now are with a couple of other guys because Joel has missed, I think, like 14 games or something. Do you think that's fair? Do you think he should still be in the conversation right there for MVP, or do you think he still is?
Yeah, I mean, that goes to what is MVP, and honestly, what the criteria for MVP literally changes based on what's convenient by year. Like usually it's like winning at a high level and then being the main driver of that winning. But there have been some famous years that I've complained about where they chose players that weren't even on very winning franchises. So that drove me crazy. So I've given up trying to understand how they pick at this point. So
I like how you kind of got away from the question as well. That was very
well, I mean, to me, like if it's, do you have the biggest impact on winning in the league, then I think Joel's it. But if your criteria is you got to play a bunch of games, then someone's gonna knock them off. I mean, I frankly, like I don't know, it's like 100, 200 voters, and I can't tell from year to year that it's very inconsistent. So I mean, I wouldn't want to work for the voters of MVP. That would drive me crazy because from one day to the next, I'd be something different. So I couldn't take that.
No, I feel you. A couple more questions for you. Ben Simmons is obviously so skilled. And I recently asked Greg Popovich, I said, can Ben be considered elite if he really doesn't shoot? And obviously, I mean, he could be defensive player of the year and he's so talented. And Greg Popovich said he is elite. But every once in a while, when I'm at the gym or something, somebody's like, hey man, when is Ben actually going to shoot the ball? So in your opinion, like, I see him pregame, and that shot looks nice. The three-pointer that we saw in the game, it looks nice. Do you eventually want that as a part of his game?
Well, I like to ask Popovich that because he gave the answer I've given, and but he's allowed to like say it more gruffly and direct, than I, or maybe he's smarter than me. I tend to be long-winded at times. Look, Ben Simmons does shoot. I mean, anyone who can shoot free throws at the level he does can shoot. We all know he can shoot. I think he's a very smart basketball player, though. Like, if you can shoot 60% on certain shots, why would you choose to shoot 40% on a different shot? Like, if we're winning, like, we should do the things that the players are good at and comfortable at and help us win. Why hammer him into why hammer the square peg into a round hole? Let's just appreciate for the great player he is, which is what Popovich said, and he can take us to the promised land. That's all that matters.
Yeah, Pop said, "Who gives a damn if he can't shoot? He's elite already."
Yeah. See, it took me 2 minutes to say that. He said it in 3 seconds. So that's why Pop has 5 rings and I don't. So.
So I know from talking with you just how badly you want to win a championship. And we saw you had some great teams in Houston, but you were going through one of the greatest teams ever built and on the court, the Warriors. So when you have the NBA the way it's set up this year, it doesn't seem like there's that clear favorite. Do you really in your gut feel like you have as good a shot as anybody to win a championship this year?
Yeah, I mean, we know that if you lead your conference and you're the number 1 defense in the league, like, those teams win the title all the time. So we know we have a chance. What is it exactly? You can look at outside measures, but we know we have a very good chance. Coach Rivers, Ben, Joel, Tobias all have us playing at a high level, and we'll see. I do think there's some scary teams. I do think Brooklyn is really put together something that is playing at a very high level. And historically, obviously the Lakers have a guy that is in the finals every year. So we're right there. So, but I agree. There's no obvious Golden State or 90s Bulls to go through, thankfully. But it's still going to be a really tough road if we make it.
Well, we really appreciate your time. I know your time is valuable. So I have one other question for you. your social media presence. It's very impressive. And I often wonder where you get the time to do all the things. Do you have somebody helping you or working with you? And why do you do it so much?
Well, my daughter does my Instagram, so that she helps me with that. With Twitter, I mean, honestly, it's just I do it the same as former presidents. You know, it's when I'm I don't want to say the rumors people talked about, but you know, there's a lot of dead time on elevators and things like that. So it's, you know, it's I enjoy, like, look, part of this job is people root for a team because they want to feel like they're part. They want to feel like they're part of something, part of a fandom, part of a community. And what they like to have a connection with authentic players, authentic coaches, and I think an authentic front office that is all together trying to win a championship. And, you know, I think that's an important reason that people are fans of a team and come to our games. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, my job is to win, but even at a higher level, it's more Scott O'Neill's job and Josh Harris's job. Like, we're an entertainment product, and winning's the best entertainment, but also, you know, liking the players and the coaches and front office, I think, is part of what we're selling.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Daryl. And thanks for listening to Take Off with John Clark. Subscribe, rate, and review where you listen to your podcast.
I'm the greatest. Oh, mom, so flagrant.